Most people think prevention means a program, a speaker in a school, a poster in a hallway, a lesson plan that says, just say no. But the truth is, if prevention is only a program, it's usually too late. Here's the question that changes everything. Why do two towns with the same kinds of kids end up with totally different substance use outcomes? We'll answer that. But first, let's talk about the biggest misunderstanding in the whole field. If you're a coalition coordinator, a prevention specialist, a public health practitioner, this misunderstanding isn't just annoying, it's expensive. It shows up as grant reports full of activities, but not much change. Partners who say they support prevention until you ask them to change something. Burnout from running the same events year after year. Community members who assume prevention is for other people's kids. And the worst part? When prevention gets reduced to programs, communities can quietly accept harmful conditions as normal. Normal stress, normal disconnection, normal easy access, normal trauma, normal hopelessness. Then, when a crisis hits, everyone asks, why didn't prevention work? Pattern interrupt question. What if the real job of prevention isn't to convince people to make better choices, but to make healthier choices easier to make? The misleading explanation goes like this. Substance misuse happens because individuals make bad choices. So prevention should teach individuals to make good choices. That's why prevention gets framed as classroom lessons, assemblies, posters and campaigns, one-time community events. To be clear, education matters, skills matter, relationships matter. But if that's the whole strategy, you end up trying to swim upstream while the current gets stronger. Because communities don't just produce choices, communities produce conditions. And conditions quietly shape what choices feel possible. Here's the twist. Prevention isn't something you deliver. Prevention is something you build. It's not mainly an event, it's an environment. It's the long game of shaping the conditions that make substance misuse more likely or less likely over time. In other words, prevention is upstream work. And upstream work often looks boring until you realize it changes everything. Let's imagine two communities, call them Riverbend and Pine Hollow. On paper, they look similar. Similar population size, similar school district budgets, similar rates of families working multiple jobs, similar exposure to social media, alcohol marketing, vaping trends. Both communities decide to do prevention. Riverbend runs a solid school-based program. They bring in speakers. They do a Red Ribbon Week campaign. They send home flyers. They mean well. Everyone is trying. Pine Hollow also runs education and youth skill building. But they do something else at the same time. They zoom out. They start asking different questions. Where is youth stress coming from in our community? Where do young people actually spend time and what norms exist there? How easy is access, really, not just legally but practically? What are the protective factors in this community and which ones are weak or missing? And then they start building around those questions. They notice something. After-school hours are a danger zone. Not because kids are bad, but because there's nothing structured, nothing affordable, and no transportation. Disconnection grows in the gap. So they partner with schools, parks, and local businesses to create consistent, accessible after-school options, and they solve transportation, not just programming. They also notice another pattern. A lot of easy access comes from social sources, older siblings, friends, unsecured meds, adults who think it's no big deal. So they combine education with environmental strategies, safe medication disposal options that are convenient, consistent messaging to adults about social hosting, retailer partnerships, and compliance checks, where appropriate. Policy conversations that feel practical, not punitive. Then they look at community norms. In Riverbend, the unspoken norm is, teens will experiment. That's just what happens. In Pine Hollow, they intentionally build a different norm. We don't shrug at this. We create conditions where young people can thrive. They train coaches, youth leaders, faith communities, and employers, not as extra partners, but as part of the protective factor infrastructure. And over time, the difference shows up. Fewer high-risk situations, stronger adult-youth relationships, earlier help-seeking, fewer crises that surprise everyone. Riverbend isn't failing because their program is bad. They're failing because their strategy is too small for the problem. If a community is sending young people into stress, isolation, easy access, and mixed messages, can a 10-session curriculum really compete with that? So what does substance misuse prevention really mean? It means changing the odds. Prevention is the work of reducing risk factors and strengthening protective factors across the places people actually live their lives: schools, families, neighborhoods, workplaces, systems, policies, and culture. Let's break that down in plain language. Downstream is responding after harm is already showing up. A crisis at school, a youth overdose, a family in emergency mode, a community grieving and scrambling. Upstream is shaping the conditions that make those crises less likely. Stable connection and belonging, healthy norms, fewer high-risk opportunities, stronger coping skills, and stronger community supports, policies, and environments that reduce harm. Downstream work is necessary, but upstream work is what changes the future. Risk factors are conditions that make substance misuse more likely. Think. Chronic stress and instability, trauma and lack of support, easy access and low perceived risk, isolation and weak connection to caring adults, community norms that treat use as no big deal. Protective factors are conditions that make healthy development more likely. Think. Strong relationships, clear expectations and consistent boundaries, meaningful roles and opportunities for youth, community connection, environments that reduce harm and reduce access. Here's the key. Prevention isn't one protective factor. It's the system that produces protective factors consistently. This is the part that people miss. Programs are not the only intervention. Community conditions are interventions too. When a community improves transportation to youth activities, that's prevention. When a school improves belonging and reduces chronic absenteeism, that's prevention. When adults change social hosting norms, that's prevention. When policies reduce easy access, that's prevention. When a coalition aligns partners around shared outcomes instead of scattered events, that's prevention. If you removed your coalition's events for a year, would the community still be getting healthier? If not, the strategy might be too dependent on activities and not enough on conditions. So here's the reframe that defines the field. Prevention is not primarily about stopping substance use. Prevention is about building the kinds of communities where substance misuse is less likely to take root and where people have support long before a crisis. That's why prevention is bigger than a school program. It's about the whole ecosystem of risk and protection. And it also explains why prevention work can feel slow at first. Because you're not just running an event, you're shifting a system. If you want a practical way to apply this without getting overwhelmed, use these 3 questions as a prevention compass. 1. What are the biggest risk conditions in our community right now? Not what program do we want to run, but what conditions are shaping behavior? 2. Which protective factors are strong and which are weak? Where do youth already have connection, meaningful roles and support, and where are the gaps? 3. What would we change if we were designing the community for health on purpose? This is where you start seeing transportation, access, norms, policies, and systems as prevention levers. Then pick one lever and build momentum. Not 10 new activities, one strong change that shifts conditions. What's one boring systems change that would make your next 3 years easier? So, What does substance misuse prevention really mean? It means we stop pretending the goal is to fix people, and we start building communities where people don't have to be superheroes just to stay healthy. Programs can be part of that. Education can be part of that. But prevention, at its core, is community change, upstream, intentional, and built to last. And when you lead with that definition, you don't just explain prevention. You give people a new way to see what's possible.